Hi, and welcome to Finextra at Sibos TV. And today we're going to be talking about innovation in responsible business. So joining me today is Marion King, CEO of Vocalink. Next to her is Lynn Patterson from Royal Bank of Canada. And last but not least is Patrick Pax from Orange. Now, you three gave a presentation today, looking at corporate responsibility. So, Lynn, I wanted to start off with you because you started off talking about these sort of three waves of corporate responsibility. Could you give us sort of a rundown of those three waves?
Yeah, we thought it would be interesting for this crowd that may not be familiar with corporate responsibility, just to give a really kind of around the world tour of the trends in corporate responsibility over the last 20 years or so. So really quickly, the first wave of corporate responsibility, I would really call that community relations, where a company would focus on writing checks and doing good in the community. And for a financial services company, that might be something like giving a donation to a university for an Aboriginal Studies program or something like that. And I'll use that Aboriginal example for all three waves. And the second wave really is where a company is taking a look at its environmental, social, and governance performance, and it's actually trying to have some positive impact in the community. So that might be something like a financial services company or a bank hiring Aboriginal people or opening a branch on a reserve, for example, in Canada. And then the third wave really is about integrating corporate responsibility right into your business, so your business is about creating value for your company and for an organization or for not-for-profit. And that might be something, for example, for a financial services company, we might develop a mortgage product for Aboriginal people so that you're actually making money and doing social good at the same time.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to look in sort of the drivers for that, like getting to that third wave where it moved from writing a check to moving into social responsibility being part of your overall business and PR and HR and the way you run. So if all three of you maybe can jump into this, maybe start with Marion. I mean, what drove that? Is it because the technology got more sophisticated, or has society changed? Are they expecting more from their companies they do business with?
I think it's more the latter, but of course technology has made people much more aware of it in terms of the media and the reporting and social networking, and seeing the younger generation coming through who actually care about the world they live in and how companies can give back. So I think it's a combination of both. But for Vocalink and other organisations, it's about making an integral part of the business. And what we talked about earlier was the ability to be able to use corporate social responsibility to promote the company and vice versa. And it becomes this value chain that's reinforcing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, do you agree? Do you think it's more society changed?
Well, I think, I fully agree with what Marion has just said. I think it's a society change. Awareness has grown, so people are much more aware about the environmental implications. So personally, I'm very much involved in everything which has to do with the environment and CO2 savings. And we as a telecommunications group actually have a natural role to play in order to reduce our own CO2 emissions, but also to develop products that can ultimately help other businesses to optimize their processes and to reduce also their emissions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, I wanted you to go into about detail about what drove that change to the third wave.
Yeah, well, what we talk about is that there's really this convergence of stakeholder demands and expectations for a company. And the more we do, the more our stakeholders expect us to do. So not just customers, but investors, employees, communities, special interest groups, governments, all of those stakeholders are really starting to demand more. And it might be more performance, more reporting, it might be more programs, it might be an expectation that we minimize the negative impacts of our products and services, and it might be trying to develop products as in the third wave that actually have a positive social impact. So it just seemed to happen in the 2000s that all of those stakeholders started coming out of the woodwork, really, and it's created this almost a corporate responsibility industry, I might say, where we've got departments and policies and reporting now that are really quite robust, and I would say that everyone at Sibos has got someone like me working in this function.
I wanted, sorry, did you
I was going to add to that. I think that also the organisations that we're supporting want to add value. They don't want handouts or checks. They want to be able to create value and create a partnership so it works for both. I mean, the example I gave earlier about commissioning corporate art from mentally handicapped children and young adults, and some of those adults recognised that they were earning for their centre and that they had created the ability for an inflow of money into their centre because of the art they produce. So they want to give value. So you get this sort of value reinforcing chain where the companies or the organisations help one another. So it's not just one-sided of corporates wanting to give, it's both ways.
That really typifies what sustainability is about, because now you've got an organization that's able to build capacity and be self-supporting with a kind of a revenue stream, and that really is what sustainability is for that company, the organization, I think.
Yeah. I wanted to get in a little bit when you mentioned about sustainability, and you gave a presentation about green IT and sustainable development. So in sort of driving green IT projects, what role do regulations play, for example?
Yeah, so the regulations definitely play an important role. We have seen, for example, in Europe that the European, let's say at the European level, there are new regulations. Also the UK government, that has been very innovative, has actually introduced the new regulations, the carbon reduction commitments, whereby the companies operating in the UK, they have to pay a tax on CO2 emissions, actually on the electricity bill, what then translates into CO2 emissions. But also there are a lot of voluntary actions, and I believe really in companies actually driving forward green IT projects, not necessarily because of regulations, but it's often also linked to the decrease of the energy use, also decreasing costs, and hence also having a positive impact in the environment by reducing the fuel consumption or by reducing the electricity consumption typically. There is also a third part which is actually about the measurement of emissions. There are a lot of initiatives nowadays, for example, at the United Nations level, for example, the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, in order to introduce standards for measuring CO2 emissions and also for measuring the savings that businesses are doing in terms of CO2 emissions. That's extremely important, maybe even more important than regulations.
I thought you gave a slide in your presentation that I thought was pretty interesting about how to ensure the success of a green IT project, where you talked about you have to ensure return on investment, there has to be an impact on KPIs, and we often think of a green project as a good thing to do, but there's a real business metric connected to these, isn't there?
Correct, yeah. So what we actually believe is that in order to implement a successful green IT project, first of all, you need to prove that there's a return on investment. It's not so difficult because you're reducing your energy bill, so you're actually reducing your cost base. Secondly, there needs to be a real business benefit. For example, if you introduce teleworking, there's probably a business benefit because people can be more efficient. Or if you introduce telepresence or high quality video conferencing solutions, you actually help people to be more effective because they don't have to travel for meetings where they do not necessarily have to travel. So they can spend more time on the things that they really have to do. And then third, you need to measure the impact. If you can't measure the savings that you do in terms of CO2 emissions, it will be a problem because you cannot properly report on the initiatives that you have created.
So Marion, I wanted to ask you a few questions. I mean, Vocalink has been very public with its corporate responsibility program for a number of years and very present at SIBO. So could you go into some more detail about what started that project?
It really started when we invited one of the young people that we were sponsoring, the youngest guy to sail single-handed around the world, along to Cybos to bring him onto the stand because there was such a lot of interest in what he'd done. I think there's a lot of sportsmen in these exhibition halls. And what we discovered was that we drew a much bigger crowd by talking about sailing around the world single-handedly than we did about, transaction banking or a certain product. And from his point of view, he found it an incredible networking opportunity for sponsorship for his next expedition, etc. So what we tapped into was the ability to attract an audience by talking about something that the company's doing that isn't necessarily about selling product or selling relationship. And then we took it a stage further by then combining it with products. So this year, we're showing our mobile gateway for processing payments via a mobile handheld smartphone. We're getting people to contribute to one of 3 causes that we're supporting here to get them to use the technology, do something they want to do, and no corporate gifts. So it's all about using these forums to promote good CSR and get the connection and again get that viral effect that we're having. And interestingly, after our presentation, we had pretty much everybody in the room came down to our stand to donate via using the mobile technology, which was great for us.
I mean, I think that's a really an interesting way to give to charities via mobile payment.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in the UK when there was a government backtrack on paper checks, kind of led by lobbies from the charities. So I mean, I know you have a report, a study available on your stand where you talked to charities. Were they? I mean, you don't have to give all the details of it, but were they really sort of hopeful, or were they happy to get this type of alternative?
Yeah, very much. It's about ease of use. I mean, they recognise that the different generations will want to give in a different way, but they also recognise that by using this capability, it gives them a direct relationship with the giver. So, you can connect and contact them back, which with anonymous donations, it doesn't happen. So they see this as a much better way of cultivating their own following and approach to fundraising. So it was really, really positive. And we had over 23 charities participate, so that showed the great interest that they have.
Okay, I want to wrap up with a final question for each of you. Lynn, you talked about the 3 stages, corporate responsibility. What's the next wave? Where are we going in the future, the next 5 years?
I think that, and I started thinking this after the financial services meltdown, that we can't continue to operate corporate responsibility the way we have in the past, where every company is trying to build its own brand, which of course we're going to do, and everybody's doing their own independent things. And I think that we're going to enter, I hope, a phase of really intense collaboration, not just with not-for-profits and corporations, but not-for-profits, corporations, and other corporations and government. Because the problems facing the world are so immense right now that I'm not sure that we can continue working in silos. So I hope that the future of corporate responsibility is really, really intense collaboration, but it's not easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where do you see us going?
Yeah, I definitely think that there will be a closer link in between corporate social responsibility and the business. So I think we will see more and more businesses that adopt CSR really at the core of what they are doing. For example, we have seen over the last 2 years, I would say, more and more companies actually appointing CSR officers reporting directly to the CEO. And often also the CSR officers that are nowadays appointed are people from the business, because they need to both understand the business and also how this links to CSR.
Yeah. So at Vocalink, you've had progression on CSR at Cybos. What's next? What's next for?
I think the next thing is just like every business, globalization. It's about the connecting. It's about getting, rather than a company trying to fight the good fight, so to speak. If you join up, collaborate. Think of the impact this industry could have. And this conference is all about connection and network and joining forces. And so that's the next phase. It's about taking the initiatives, the ideas, the opportunities that organizations have created, combining them. And we saw it yesterday when we looked at what you were doing at Royal Bank of Canada and thinking, if we did the same, then we could connect and share stories. And because there are only 4 key centres for this particular mental health strategy in the world, well, if supporting companies connected those 4 together, you can have a bigger impact.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.